A Nightmare on Elm Street is one of the greatest franchises in all of horror. From its phenomenal leads to its nightmare-inducing villain, there are few series that have left the mark that Elm Street has. But with technically 9 movies, it can be a bit overwhelming for a new viewer. So if this is your first time, or you're just wanting a recap, join us as we tell you what the f*** you need to know about the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. The story of Elm Street is a simple one. Freddy Krueger is a child murderer who attacks teenagers in their dreams. He terrorizes several people, and it results in them fighting back and eventually vanquishing the dream demon. Despite its rather fantastical elements, this franchise firmly resides in the slasher category. So all the tropes you'd expect are all present here. A final girl, or boy, a near indestructible being killing teens, adults being absolutely useless, and kill after kill after kill. But what Elm Street really excels at is taking a character and making them go crazier and crazier as they get less and less sleep and more people around them keep dying.
Sorry, kids. I don't believe in fairy tales.
Famed horror director Wes Craven came up with the idea for Elm Street after reading several articles in the 1970s about refugees who refused to go to sleep due to trauma and the awful nightmares that would follow, eventually causing them to die. There was one case in particular about a young boy who refused to go to sleep, even hiding away the sleeping pills that his parents were giving him. They even found an old coffee pot in his closet, which would later be used in Elm Street. This caused Craven to go down the rabbit hole of figuring out why someone would do that to themselves. And that's when a certain dream demon entered the foray. While most killers and slashers would be shackled to the real world, Freddy was able to reach his victims in their dreams. He torments them and uses their worst fears against them. Freddy Krueger has reached the upper echelon of horror that very few have, and it's because of how damn great he is throughout the entire series. Whether it's his terrifying start, his quipping one-liners, or his return to the dark side, there's always something to latch onto when it comes to Fred Krueger. And so much of that falls on the shoulders of Robert Englund. Without his performance, it's unlikely we would have gotten the behemoth that the franchise would eventually become. And yeah, Jackie Earle Haley played the role in the remake, but it really doesn't work, at all. Both because of the lazy script and his almost exact use of his voice from Watchmen, it just really didn't land. Plus, who the hell approved this makeup job? But who exactly is Fred Krueger? Craven originally modeled him after an elderly man that he had seen as a child. The man's gaunt features and fedora always stood out to him, so when it came to creating Krueger, he drew from his nightmares. Fred Krueger has terrorized the town of Springwood, Ohio for years, and he is pretty much instantly recognizable. His red and green sweater, the beaten fedora, and burnt skin are simply appetizers for the main course. His handmade bladed glove for slicing up his victims. Everything about his appearance evokes fear. Even the specific shade of red and green were chosen by Craven because of a psychological discomfort the colors cause when placed next to each other. Then there's all the one-liners he has.
Hey Dylan, ever played Skin the Cat?
Hell, we featured a ton in this video and we still haven't even scratched the surface. Just like his creative kills, from being eaten by a bed to being puppeted like a marionette, and even getting funky with a Nintendo Power Glove. Freddy always seems to have creative ways to kill. And sure, his makeup definitely goes through some changes over the years, but it's instantly recognizable the moment you see it.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Let's do a quick run through of what exactly went on in these Elm Street movies.
Come to Freddy.
First up, we had A Nightmare on Elm Street in 1984. In the beginning, we follow Tina as she's being haunted by this burnt and terrifying man in her dreams, Freddy Krueger. They pull a nice little Marion Crane and Psycho on us and kill off Tina early, only for us to follow our actual lead, Nancy. She goes down a journey of discovery where she finds out more about Krueger and how to stop him. Which of course she does. Or does she? This is the basic structure for every Elm Street film from here on out. But there's something extra special about this first one. It's terrifying and features some of the coolest moments in the whole series. Genuinely one of the greatest horror movies of all time.
You are all my children now.
Just the next year in 1985, we received A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. A new family's moved into Nancy's old house at 1428 Elm, including young Jesse. And we have our male lead. He starts having some crazy dreams, and Krueger starts to take over Jesse's body. He eventually takes him over completely and comes into the real world. It's a misstep in damn near every conceivable way, but it features some truly hilarious moments which can only be described as, well, pretty gay. Check out Scream Queen on Shudder if you want to find out even more about that, because it's fascinating.
Welcome to prime time, bitch!
A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors released in 1987 and was set mostly at a teen mental hospital. Kristen is being haunted by Freddy to the point that she gets thrown into the hospital herself. We get a cool story of these teens banding together and becoming the Dream Warriors. It certainly wasn't without its losses though. Oh, and we get Nancy back, who is now a sleep specialist and gets to counsel the teens. Unfortunately, her story is brought to a definitive close, but Freddy is super defeated. Yep, not gonna hear from that guy for a long time.
How sweet! Fresh meat!
Just 1 year later, in 1988, A Nightmare on Elm Street 4 The Dream Master started setting up more and more continuity. Freddy yet again comes back, but this time it was from a dog pissing fire onto his bones. Yeah, really sets up how crazy this movie gets. Then they decided to kill off all the remaining characters from the prior film, including a very different looking Kristen. We've got a new lead, and her name is Alice, who can control dreams with the best of them. It keeps with the structure of one person losing everyone around them until they can finally best Freddy.
It's a boy!
1989's A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, finally brings about a new concept. The film's former lead Alice is pregnant, and therefore Freddy gets constant access to Alice through her sleeping baby. Other than that, it still follows the same Elm Street formula we've seen time and time again. You'll hear that a lot. This is definitely where the series starts showing some fatigue, but there's still plenty of fun to be had. We're just well past the days of the original.
Oh, yeah. Great to be back in business.
Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare came to us in 1991 and was intended to be the end of the franchise. No, really, they even held a funeral for it. It supposes that Freddy had a daughter and tried to explain his dream powers as being something that came from these dream demons. It's dumb, but it does feature interesting ideas like Springwood being barren of children because Freddy has killed them all. The movie was even released in 3D, which became obvious when Freddy's offed. It's truly awful.
Hey Dylan, ever played Skin the Cat?
1994's New Nightmare is where the series really excels in its originality. While this meta approach has been done time and time again, at the time it felt so fresh and original. In this movie, the Elm Street series exists, and the film's original star, Heather Langenkamp, is being terrorized by a dream demon who has taken the form of Freddy Krueger. It's visceral and harder hitting than any of the other sequels. They even bring back a bunch of the franchise actors in a funeral scene.
The only thing to fear is fear himself.
In 2003, we finally received the matchup that had been rumored for years, with Freddy versus Jason. The tone of that movie is more Looney Tunes than either Elm Street or Friday the 13th, but it's definitely an entertaining ride. Make sure you're also caught up on the filmography of Jason Voorhees for maximum enjoyment.
Did you know that after the heart stops beating, the brain keeps functioning for well over 7 minutes? We got 6 more minutes to play.
Finally, in 2010, A Nightmare on Elm Street was rebooted and followed a very similar story to the original. Unfortunately, it's easily the worst in the entire series and doesn't work in any way whatsoever. They try and suppose that maybe Freddy was a good guy and that the children had falsely accused him. It is such a colossally dumb angle to take for a character that's so established, because the twist that, oh wow, he's actually a bad guy, doesn't quite hit as hard. We obviously know that. We've now seen 9 films where he doesn't have a shred of good in him. And that's the Freddy that he needs to be, not whatever this is. But you're probably asking, Tyler, which of these movies are actually worth my time? Well, let's break it down. As far as essential viewing, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Dream Warriors, and New Nightmare are all perfect. Then, if you're finding yourself with a little more time, Freddy's Revenge, Dream Master, Dream Child, and Freddy vs. Jason are a fun enough time. Then, if you don't really have that much time, you can absolutely skip Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare and the Nightmare reboot because, yeah, there's not a whole lot there for you.
Freddy! Where you hiding at, you burnt-faced pussy?
When it comes to characters, Elm Street does it right. Our leads in the films include Nancy Thompson, Jesse Walsh, Kristen Parker, Alice Johnson, real-life Heather Langenkamp, then a considerably worse Nancy Holbrook. Then I don't even know what's going on with Freddy's Dead. Outside of the remake, which features an absolute abomination of the Nancy character, all of the leads kick ass. Even Mark Patton's Jesse has developed such a following over the years because all the gay overtones in the movie. But it's not just the leads. From Johnny Depp's Glenn to Kincaid and Joey, every movie has a little something in terms of characters that you actually care about. So let's go through all of the important characters from the series, or at least the ones that are worth repeating. Elm Street has some fantastic characters, so this is going to be a long one. Freddy Krueger. Nancy Thompson. Nancy's parents, her mom Marge, and her dad Lieutenant Thompson. Glenn Lance. Tina Gray. Rod Lane.
Hey, up yours with a twirling lawnmower.
Jesse Walsh. Lisa Weber. Ron Grady.
Something is trying to get inside my body.
Yeah, and she's female and she's waiting for you in the cabana.
Kristen Parker. Amanda Kruger. The Dream Warriors themselves. Joey, Will, Philip, Taryn, Jennifer, Kincaid,
let's go kick the motherfucker's ass all over Dreamland.
Alice Johnson, Rick Johnson, Mark Gray, Dan, Yvonne, Maggie, Carlos.
Yeah, well, the map says we're fucked.
Freddy's father, Heather Langenkamp playing herself, Dylan, Julie the babysitter, even Wes fucking Craven. And yes, I believe that's his official name. And then not a single memorable character from the reboot. Yikes. Ever since the failed reboot in 2010, there have been whisperings of a new film in the franchise. Orphan writer David Leslie Johnson wrote a remake, but according to producer Brad Fuller, development has been slow. Johnson has claimed that it's mostly due to the studio focusing on their very successful Conjuring universe. But before they were able to do anything with the series, the rights reverted back to the Craven estate. While they have taken many different pitches for the material, including one by actor and producer Elijah Wood, nothing has gotten off the ground as of yet. Robert Englund has stated his interest in cameoing in the film, though his desire to play Krueger appears to have diminished, claiming he's just too old for the role. However, that hasn't stopped studio heads like Jason Blum stating that they would actually like to make an Elm Street movie with Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. So really, who knows what's gonna happen? So whatever the future of Elm Street holds, it may just be doing it with a new dream demon. Englund himself has suggested Kevin Bacon for the role, but with Bacon's age, it likely isn't viable for a long-running franchise. When Englund himself was cast, he was still on the younger side, just playing an older character. Whatever they end up doing, here's hoping they pay some proper homage to the films that came before them, while still providing a fun and original take on the material. We hope you enjoyed this look at the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let us know what other franchise you need to know about. Happy Halloween, and what better way to celebrate it than to dive into all these sister-killing shenanigans of Michael Myers. Or wait, is he not a sister killer anymore? Or he just killed his sister the one time and now he's just an evil dude? Or is Laurie really his sister? Okay, I get it. It's a very confusing series. Hell, there are 3 movies all called Halloween. So join me as I try to break it all down in simple terms and explain what the f you need to know about the Halloween franchise. Before we can get into the Myers character, we need to look at where all of this came from. After Carpenter had success with Assault on Precinct 13, producer Mustafa Akkad sought him out to make a horror movie about a psychotic killer who stalked babysitters. Carpenter drafted the story with his girlfriend Deborah Hill and called it The Babysitter Murders. They wrote the screenplay in approximately 10 days, with Hill contributing to most of the female characters' dialogue. The name Michael Myers was actually a tribute to the man that distributed Assault on Precinct 13. The entire concept behind Myers is that he's pure evil and absolutely unkillable. And when it comes to the mask, I'm sure you've all heard the story. They modified an old William Shatner mask and painted it white, giving it that iconic ghostly look. The contrast against the blackness of night make him a cinematographer's wet dream. And for those unaware, the origins of Michael Myers are an absolute classic. On Halloween night back in 1963, a 6-year-old Michael Myers murdered his sister Judith with a knife and is admitted into Smith's Grove Sanitarium. He breaks out and goes on a rampage, trying to reach his other sister, Laurie. Or, well, I guess we could go into the Rob Zombie version where a 10-year-old version of Michael is abusing animals and getting verbally abused by his entire family. Oh, and his mom is a stripper with a crappy boyfriend. Because cliches are back on the menu. The Rob Zombie version of Michael is also a massive linebacker. And pretty much every version of Michael really hates dogs. The David Gordon Green version of the character is essentially just a continuation of the Carpenter version from the original, only turned up to 11 as the series goes on. Michael has been portrayed by many different performers over the years. Nick Castle originated the role, although Tony Moran played him when he was unmasked. Then we had Dick Warlock, George P. Wilbur, Don Shanks, Chris Durand, and Brad Lorre. Then for the zombie films, Dave Ferrick played young Michael, while Tyler Mane played the much larger version of the character. James Jude Courtney took over the part for the David Gordon Green trilogy, although Nick Castle did take part in a key scene. And since every performer that's ever gotten under the mask outside of Mane is doing a Nick Castle impression, he's pretty clearly the quintessential Michael Myers. But we've got 13 of Michael's exploits to get through, so let's dive into them.
Killed him.
You can't kill the boogeyman.
It all started with a bang in 1978 with Halloween. We already went over the Michael setup, but what about the victims? Laurie Strode and her friends Annie and Linda are babysitting for the night. Well, the former two are. Linda is just wanting to get busy with her boyfriend. Priorities. Michael kills them all until just Laurie remains, but thankfully Dr. Loomis is able to save the day. But for how long? Damn near everyone that's in this movie could be considered on the memorable characters list. From Marion Chambers to Sheriff Brackett, they're all great. Annie and Linda feel dimensional and have great interactions, while Laurie Strode herself is the ultimate scream queen. And there's a reason that Dr. Sam Loomis became a trope all his own in slashers. We also had the kids, Tommy Doyle and Lindsay Wallace.
Call the police! Tell the sheriff I shot him! Who? Tell him he's still on the loose!
1981 brought us Halloween 2, and things started to move past the label of simple slasher. Taking place on the same night as the original, Laurie is recovering in a hospital. Unfortunately for her, Michael is on a path of destruction right towards her. But why is he so obsessed with this girl? Well, we learn that Laurie is actually Michael's sister. So, like his sister before, he's all about murdering her. With the help of Loomis, Laurie is able to shoot out Michael's eyes and blow him up. As far as new characters, I always get a kick out of Orderly Bud.
It's 4 days to Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. It's 4 days to Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
They threw a curveball into the formula in 1982 with Season of the Witch. This saw Michael Myers being entirely absent from the film, and instead we focus on a plot to kill children across the United States. No, really, that's what this movie's about. There's an evil warlock who sets up a Halloween mask-making factory and sends these 3 masks across the country. When this specific advertisement plays, the masks do their magic and melt the kids' faces off. Jesus. As far as memorable characters, we've got Tom Atkins. Is there really any more that needs to be said?
You're talking about him as if he were a human being. That part of him died years ago.
The series took a little bit of a break until 1988 when Halloween 4: The Return of Michael Myers released to theaters. This saw Laurie passed away in a car accident, and Michael now hunting down her daughter Jamie, who is in a foster home. Jamie's foster sister Rachel is the ultimate big sister and looks after her. When Michael escapes and targets Jamie, Rachel is the one that is protecting her. Eventually it ends in a showdown where Michael is shot an absurd amount of times by a group of cops and rednecks. Then there's even a fun little tease at the end of Michael's powers transferring to his niece Jamie. Rachel is one of the better final girls, and Jamie does a wonderful job of continuing the saga in an intriguing way.
Let's play a game. Catch the little girl.
Just 1 year later, Halloween 5: The Revenge of Michael Myers started to make things weird. Jamie is now psychic and still being hunted by her Uncle Michael, who escaped his demise at the end of the last movie by getting revived by an old hermit. He's yet again hunting down Jamie, only this time he makes sure to take out her protection in Rachel. It goes about how you would expect, with Loomis handling business and killing Michael. Just kidding. They use a net and arrest him. No, I'm not kidding. Thank God for this mysterious man in black who shows up with a fucking machine gun to break Michael out of jail. I guess you could add Tina to this list, but she's not memorable in the best of ways.
What makes you think he'll come back here?
This house is sacred to him. He has all his memories here. His rage!
Dimension Films picked up the rights to the series and released The Curse of Michael Myers in 1995. This is the MTV Halloween and gloriously violent. Jamie Lloyd has a baby who ends up in the hands of a grown-up Tommy Doyle. Oh hey, I know that guy. Jamie is killed off, and most of the movie is dealing with this weird cult, otherwise known as the Cult of Thorne. While most of this was cut out of the theatrical version, you can see more of this in the producer's cut. Despite being the same film, the two cuts couldn't be more different in presentation. So if you want a cult story, go with the producer's cut, but if you just want a simple slasher, stick with the theatrical. Tommy Doyle is absolutely stellar here, and Jamie may have been memorable if they hadn't replaced Danielle Harris.
Michael Myers is dead.
1998 saw the franchise returning to its roots with Halloween H2O, or Halloween 20 years later. Laurie Strode returns and is the principal at a private school in California. We're just gonna ignore the fact that this kind of means that Laurie faked her death and abandoned her daughter Jamie in the process. Laurie has some serious PTSD that her son John gives her shit for. But she proves to be right because Michael hunts her down yet again and tries to kill her and John. Thankfully, Laurie gets the best of him and seemingly even decapitates him. Laurie is, of course, fantastic, and I may catch shit for this, but I quite enjoyed Ronnie. He provides for some really fun moments.
I'll see you in hell.
2002 brought Michael into the digital era with Halloween Resurrection. They completely go back on the ending of the first film, which is whatever and kind of expected. The opening closes off the Laurie Strode saga by murdering her in unceremonious fashion. Then we move to the real story. Busta Rhymes is some producer trying to do a reality show set in the old Myers house. Things, of course, go awry when Michael shows up and starts murdering the contestants during the stream. And we're treated to this all-time line.
Trick or treat, motherfucker.
And since memorable has a positive connotation, I can't really include anyone from this film here.
Afraid you can't go home.
Why?
Because you've done terrible things.
2007 brought us Rob Zombie's Halloween, which would remake the first film, but also break the golden rule of explaining the killer's origins. Rather than a completely normal kid that just snapped, this version of Michael tortures animals and is an absolute weirdo. He murders more than just his sister this time around, and definitely eats his Wheaties, because he grows up to look like this. We get to see Michael's full breakout before the film settles into full-blown remake territory. Only Laurie goes from a shy girl to whatever this is.
Laurie! I'm sorry.
There's even a cool moment at the end where Laurie shoots Michael's head off. Talk about an ending. Malcolm McDowell's Sam Loomis is absolutely phenomenal and one of the main reasons I tell people that they need to see this movie. Everyone else is pretty forgettable, though Tyler Mane does a good job as a vicious linebacker version of Michael.
I'm Michael Myers' sister! I'm so fucked!
Rob Zombie gave us his follow-up in 2009, aptly titled Halloween 2. This mostly follows Laurie as she's dealing with some pretty serious PTSD. And despite being shot in the face point blank, Michael is walking around all fine and dandy. In fact, he has a whole new mountain man look. We get a repeat of a lot of the same stuff from the last film, only this time with a weird unicorn and dead mom dream sequence making it even more nonsensical. And it features what I would call the worst moment in the entire franchise. There's no one memorable in this one, though I'll give Annie some credit for picking herself up by her bootstraps and trying to get her life together. And the fact that she miraculously survived the last film only to be brutally slaughtered here, yeesh.
He waited for this night. He's waited for me. I've waited for him.
Finally, after a decade of dormancy, the series came back in a big way, with Jamie Lee Curtis reprising her role as Laurie Strode for Halloween 2018. This ignored all the sequels we just talked about and just treats the original film as canon, and would be the start of a whole new trilogy of sorts. This means that Laurie and Michael are not related, and it was only ever the singular incident in 1978. In a lot of ways, this follows a similar structure to the first film, with Michael escaping from an asylum and wreaking havoc on Haddonfield. But the ending goes full Home Alone and we get quite the showdown between Laurie and Michael, which seemingly ends with Michael going down for good. While Laurie is incredible as always, we also have her daughter Karen and granddaughter Allison. Officer Hawkins also shows up as the most important authority figure since Loomis from the original. Halloween Kills came to us in 2021 and absolutely lived up to the name. Taking place on the same night as 2018, we follow Michael's rampage as he makes it out of the fire and continues his massacre across Haddonfield. Unfortunately, Laurie is mostly confined to a hospital bed for most of the film, but it gives some of the other characters, like Karen, a chance to shine. There's a dumb subplot,
Evil dies tonight!
But mostly the movie is just a fun slasher. The ending, where Michael kills about a dozen people, including Karen, is easily the highest body count he's had in such a short span of time. We had all the returning greats from the last film, but we also got the wonderful inclusion of Big John and Little John. Plus, I know some people got a kick out of Anthony Michael Hall's version of Tommy Doyle, even if I didn't.
You're just a man who's about to stop breathing.
And just this year, we received the end of the current franchise with Halloween Ends. While advertised as the final showdown between Michael and Laurie, we got that for all of 10 minutes. Instead, the movie focuses on Corey Cunningham, a down-on-his-luck 20-something from Haddonfield who tries to take on the mantle of the Shape. It does not go well, and we're treated to a Halloween movie that featured Michael for all of 5 minutes. Enjoy. Again, no one is memorable here.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
It's Halloween. Everyone's entitled to one good scare.
Okay, we've gone through all the movies. Now let's see which are going to be worth your time, what you can keep on in the background while doing other stuff, and what you need to avoid like the plague. Let's do this. As far as essential viewing, it shouldn't surprise you that the original Halloween is right at the top of the list. If you haven't seen this film, you're missing out on one of the greatest horror films of all time. Then Halloween 4 further solidified Michael as one of the best slashers out there. Halloween H2O deserves a spot up here for bringing Laurie and Michael face to face again. And hell, the same can be said for Halloween 2018, which is a wonderful continuation of the Laurie Strode saga. This lineup really gives you a taste for all eras of Halloween. Then, if you've got the time, and I know some of these are going to be controversial, but hey, I couldn't put all of these on the essentials list. So we've got Halloween 2, Halloween 3, Halloween The Curse of Michael Myers, and Halloween Kills. And then for the ones that you should be avoiding, Halloween 5, Halloween Resurrection, both Rob Zombie Halloweens, and Halloween Ends. But that's the great thing about this series. One person's turd can be another person's gem. Except for the first one. That one is great no matter what. So make sure you share your list in the comments. With Halloween Ends wrapping up the Laurie Strode saga, the big question is, what's next for Halloween? While Malik Akkad has been rather hush on the subject, one thing is for sure. That was not the last we've seen of Michael Myers. What form that comes in is yet to be seen. A remake, a requel, another sequel that ignores some of the films while keeping others canon? There are plenty of options because Halloween fans have, if anything, shown a willingness to adapt to whatever oddities the franchise throws their way. And whenever they do, we'll be sure to tell you what the fuck you need to know about it. Thanks for watching, and make sure to tell us some other franchises you want us to cover.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.